What's the good word, Josh? Your boy DKB here. We're back into our New York Jets 2024 undrafted free agent class, and this is one of the more hyped guys you've been waiting for me to dive into in Connecticut's Eric Watts. Doesn't really have a position, right? He's played on the edge in that Connecticut defense, but realistically in the NFL, you can use him in a variety of manners, odds, even fronts, add more weight on him, push him inside, keep him out on the edge. Either way, the one thing that I do know is this man is almost the ideal player if you're Robert Saleh and you're looking for somebody to slide into a wide nine alignment with the physical stature that he's bringing, 6'6", 274 pounds, the athleticism, basketball background, right? Tested out of the waters when it came to a lot of the agility, power, explosion type metrics out there. So I was impressed. I will say this is another guy that the athleticism doesn't seem to match up with what you always get on tape. You see it in spurts, and this is why I say I don't necessarily discredit any player that doesn't look like they're necessarily playing as fast as they would be running for a 40. To me, it just means they have the potential to tap into that. Something's holding them back. And again, it's normally from a technique standpoint. And I think that still fits the bill with a guy like Eric Watts, right? Played mainly as a 5-tech with Connecticut. Had some 2- and 3-point stances as well. So Connecticut really did. The Huskies relied quite a bit on his defensive ability to be able to go out there and cause mismatches no matter where they put him and be able to disguise a lot of their looks. Some of those came as he's played a few snaps as a 3-tech, and then he's also been in that wide 9 alignment. So on film, the Jets have somewhat of an idea of what he may be bringing, but he has an elite wingspan. The arm length is ridiculous. Speed and explosion numbers like I talked about. And this was a guy that I won't even say if everything clicked right, but, many people thought he could have been as high as a 4th, maybe a 5th round type of guy. There was definitely projections of him being an undrafted free agent just because his production was really, really low. I think across his 5 years, he's only had about 9.5 sacks or something like that. 2022 was definitely his best year where he racked up 7 or 7.5. But from a productivity standpoint, based on everything he's bringing to the table, it was disappointing. So I can see that. But there's plenty of guys that we've seen that don't have the production coming out of college that's able to utilize a lot of those traits and natural strengths that they're bringing, and they ball out in the NFL. So I wouldn't necessarily say use that as, the harshest criticism against him. Now, what does he do really, really well? He's shown development and being able to stack and shed in terms of using those techniques when he's playing on the line, right? A lot of those guys don't really understand how any of that applies, right? There's plenty of opportunities on tape with this guy where you see him having guys fumble into each other just based on how he was able to set them up when a double team or something like that was coming. He uses length really well, specifically for strip sacks. If he's coming around the corner and that, quarterback isn't being overly secure with the ball and he, has it out there, he's playing with it, is Eric Watts. At that point, it's a done deal. He has a great first step, strong accelerator, good speed to power usage, optimizes his length really well to make sure he can get into that chest plate and really try to control the movements of the offensive linemen. And you talk about him being a solid edge setter. This is a guy that really does feel like he has the potential to I won't say dominate, but be a strong player in all elements, right? I really do kind of envision him being someone that can kind of be that John Franklin Myers type player for the New York Jets if he can figure out how to become a more consistent player during the latter stages of his career. Good pursuit, high effort on plays. You see him constantly going to try to chase guys down all across the screen, sideline to sideline, even if he has to go and try to get a guy down the field. He can time when the pass is down. Now, this is a plus, right? You think J.J. Watt immediately when you think about batting passes as a defensive lineman. But in the same token, and we'll get into some of his opportunities, but a lot of his pass rushes stall out, and that's the reason why he had to find another way to impact the offense. And luckily, he was able to by getting into those passing lanes, using that length, understanding when the quarterback's eyes are locking in, etc., to make something happen for his team. Has a solid stab and rip move, was utilized in the punt return, punt coverage, field goal block, and field goal units. And you see the athleticism pop up more often than not when he's being utilized on stunts. Having that man run down behind a DT on you and he's unblocked coming at the quarterback, it's a fearsome sight, right? Loved everything I see from Watts when it comes to a play being perfect. I will say he's also benefited quite a bit, even in a lot of the sacks he did get, by end up somehow being unblocked and just kind of having free plays, but you capitalize on what an offense is giving you or failing to stop. Now, a lot of his opportunities, he's long torsoed, right, which means he's generally in an upright stance more often than you want. Leverage concerns are always going to be a problem with Watts until he can get that under his belt, but that means things like a bull rush, which should be overly effective for a guy with the strength that he's bringing, aren't as effective. Balance is going to be a huge concern with a guy like Eric Watts, where you don't want to see him on the ground, as often as you may, because he's being stalled out and, he's not winning those leverage battles, getting those shoulder pads as low as he can. Not really as adept at controlling the line of scrimmage when it comes to facing those run blocks. It's not really a disciplined gap guy, which again, you can mitigate a lot of that in our defensive scheme, but something to be wary of. He's winning more with athleticism than technique. We talked about his stab and rip move, but to be honest, he doesn't have a ton in his arsenal, right? For example, when we broke down McGregor, he was a guy that also didn't have elite production, but he also had a significant injury. But even being 2 years removed from being able to do anything physically on the field to help out his team, McGregor built an arsenal of moves. He understood how to set up a lot of these offensive linemen, really had an opportunity to have just a strong pass rush game plan all 4 quarters because of all the moves he has. Eric Watts needs to get to that point, and if he can, he's going to be a problem 100%. But right now, there's not really much outside of those 2 moves, and again, due to his leverage problems, it's going to stall other stuff like him trying to bull rush people. Can't disengage from blocks as consistently as you'd expect, again, for his strength, for his length, and some of those speed traits that he's going to be able to bring. Good ankle flexion at the top of his rush, though. So he's kind of an odd guy, again, from an athleticism standpoint and what he's producing out on the field. But legs don't continue to drive after he's making contact. A lot of that, again, ends up wiping out a lot of those pass rush opportunities, which is why he crafted being able to find a way to, block the ball out of the air, bat some of those passes down. Hand usage isn't really consistent. You'll see him bite on a lot of misdirections and fakes, leading to some easy opportunities to rip off chunk plays on the ground. He'll be wiped out by double teams, doesn't really have the strength or the skill set or the wherewithal, I guess, to be able to understand how to attack those or withhold those either. And he can essentially be run out of a play, right? So definitely a lot of development you want to see out of a guy like this. But if you're Robert Saleh, I think you're looking at, can he beat out a Michael Clemens, for example? If so, you're happy. Michael Clemens, a dude that I still really, really love. A lot of it does have to do with his attitude and his demeanor necessarily than him having a strong NFL skill set, although I do still believe he's an excellent to elite run defender. But if you're Robert Saleh and you don't want to risk potentially losing a guy like Watts, I can see you finding a way to keep him on the roster if it's a close competition. And then when you want to take a look at some pro comps in terms of playing styles, physical builds and stuff, Janarius Robinson, Dominic Robinson, Cameron Jordan was the interesting one, but a lot of that is based on just the physical build. And then Jalen Jelks has some names that I've seen thrown out there. But I know a lot of you have already mentioned some comments about him. Let me know what you think. Am I too high? Am I too low on Eric Watts? And I'll catch you guys again. Peace.